We have a new addition to the Axiom iron shaft family in the way of the 95. And we've been longing for the 95 to come out. For those golfers where the 105 is just a little bit too much and the 75 isn't quite enough. Now, interestingly, there is no extra stiff in the 95. We only have it in regular and stiff. Also, in the 125 gram shaft, they only do that in an X. They don't do that in a stiff. Maybe because the golfer that kind of needs an extra stiff, 105X covers what they need. And the golfer that needs the 125, you probably need an extra stiff anyway. But I'm going to hit a few with the 75. Oh, rusty swing. But even though that's a fairly cold swing, it's still got everything out of the shot that I wanted. 75, very easy to get through the ball. 190 carry, and I think I've got 191 written down. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I'm hitting these on the Srixon ZXi7 on 2 degrees flat because I tend to move the ball to the left-hand side, so that flat lie angle just moves the ball out to the right-hand side for me, or just reduces how much it can curve. But the 75, I could quite happily play with the 75. Maybe I would get a little bit too much height from it, but I wouldn't have to put a huge amount of effort into it. And the 75, I've had a lot of golfers in fittings in the studio here who were previously using 100, 110 gram shafts, and they've used the 75 and they've got more output because it's easier to get through the ball, and they haven't lost any stability compared to that 100, 110 gram shaft. But there is the odd golfer where that 75 could be just a little bit heavier, just a little bit stiffer, to get a little bit more stability for their speed. And when we swing the club back, the shaft bends and the shaft releases into the ball, and if it releases into the ball too much, we get a little bit more height, maybe a bit more left, which is why we might go to something stiffer or heavier. So I have up to date been hard stepping the 75 stiff, so the 8 iron shaft goes into the 7 iron and plays at a 7 iron length because we get a thicker shaft playing in the 7 iron's place instead of the standard 7 iron shaft, so it just adds a little bit, it just takes the edge off a little bit. Or soft stepping the 105, so we make a 6 iron shaft into the 7 iron and cut it down so it's a little bit lighter and it's just got a little bit more give. So it's nice to have the 95 introduced to the market. And one thing I can see happening quite a lot is combo sets of shafts where golfers have maybe the 95 in the wedges up to the 6 iron, and then in the 5 and 4 iron they might have the 75, just where they're moving into those longer irons that are a little bit harder to hit, maybe statistically a little bit less consistent, and then we just make life a little bit easier by combining different weights through the set. Wow, I can feel just that little bit more stiffness compared to the 75. And generally with the Axiom shafts and the Velocore shafts, they do what they say on the tin. They do exactly what I would expect in a fitting. If someone's got a certain ball flight and they're using a certain shaft and I need to get it higher and left, or I need to get it lower and right, or I might manipulate the head a little bit, but if I put the right shaft in, I get the changes I would expect, which is why the Velocore do really well, even though they cost a bit more money than your average shaft. Now if I jump into the 105, wow, that does feel heavier. I can feel the extra weight. I've got more mass I need to get through the golf ball. But for those faster, stronger players, you're going to need something a little bit stiffer, a little bit heavier to maintain that ball flight and get more consistency. When you've got maybe not quite as much pace, you just want something lighter and easier to just get through the ball without bursting a blood vessel, because we don't want that. Nice. I'm a bit more familiar with the 105 because I've got the 105X in my stock clubs. We'll get a little feel for what the difference in data is between the three, but I've got that on tap. But in like a 2 iron driving iron maybe, it might be a nice idea to put the 95 in the 2 iron, or the utility club. Although I'm quite enjoying my 7 wood, so the 2 iron goes in the bag, or 2 or 3 iron goes in the bag a bit less. Axiom 75. Now I'm a bit more warmed up. Nice and easy to get through the ball. That was slappy off the toe, and I've still got my normal yardage, because all the Velocore shafts in the woods and the irons have this wonderful technology in the tip near the head. It's a different weave of fiber, so when you hit it off center, you get less twisting, less distortion, less deflection, so you maintain more speed on those off center hits, and I truly believe it works, which is why my sticks have the Axiom in them. Beautiful, even so much so that I can use a 75-gram shaft and it not be too wobbly and weak for me. I can still get away with playing that. I might just get a bit more height than I need. Not that it matters, but I think the Axiom 95 has just a slightly matter finish, but it could be that I've had these demo shafts in there for a while and just where they've been rubbed and moved and slid on things, they're a bit shinier. I don't know if it's that being slightly matter or those being slightly more used that's giving me that impression. Couple more with a 95 and then we will look at the data. Whoa, that feels so good. Ooh, misread it. Ooh, a little overturn. That's why I go 105X, because I don't want that to happen. And with something slightly lighter than I'm used to, I might just get that coming in a little bit more. But let's have a look at the data on those shots. So I've got quite similar peak heights on the 105 and the 95. I've got 117 a piece on both. 122 on the 75, so the lighter shaft, I'm just getting a bit more height. Angle of descent is steepest with the 75, and then 49.2 with the 95, and then 49.1 with the 105, so progressive relative to the weight of the shaft. Offline, I've gone 4.9 right, 1.1 right, 1.9 right, so I'm not getting a massive variance in finishing direction. Actually slightly righter with the 75. I've got more draw spin on the 105, could just be because I've only hit 3 shots with it, but I did have more draw spin on this test. I would normally expect that to draw a little bit less. I've got very similar ball speed between the 3. I've got most on the 105, probably because I've got a bit more efficiency through the ball for my swing speed. Same sort of ball speed as each other on the 75 and the 95. Launch angle, lowest with the 105 stiff, marginally highest with the 75, so a little bit easier to get airborne. On the 75, I've got higher launch angle, got higher peak height, and slightly lower spin. I've got the very similar spin 105 to 95. Interesting, 189 against 188 against 188. We're looking at very similar patterns between the 3, just that slight change in height and flight. We've got more height, 75, lowest height on the 105. Very similar direction, but very different feel and ease through the golf ball. 105 needed a bit more juice to kind of like keep up with it, and if I were to go flat out, the 105 will keep up very well. The 75 might start varying a bit more, but it still does a very good job. And I've done lots of fittings with the 75 for the golfer that hasn't got as much speed, and they get through the ball beautifully and they hit the ball nice and consistently with those shafts. Again, that Velocord technology in the tip is very good. But there we go, new addition to the family is the 95, and I think it's a very welcome thing because we had 30 grams between the 75 and the 105. A very welcome addition.